Two. Well, hello everybody. This is Gary, otherwise known as Flyback, and I'm with you once again. This is going to be a discussion that you probably might not be used to on my channel, namely the discussion on literature. Now, as you may or may not know, I have a degree in English. People have said I faked it. I wouldn't lie about some of that, especially as education and a lot of other things are now readily available in 2 clicks. Google is your friend if you want to check me up on that claim. I have my certificates if you really want to see them. But that isn't beyond the by. You don't need to have any qualifications in English to review a book. You don't need to have any qualifications whatever to review a book, a film, or any other media. All you have to do is have an interest in it and to be passionate about the subjects you talk about. However, there was a Twitter discussion between me and a lady who calls herself Reads with Rachel. Now, Reads with Rachel is a booktuber with just over 10,000 subscribers. I would actually go over and subscribe to her channel. And for those people who are attacking it, don't. Just don't. Okay? You ruined the conversation which needs to happen, which is the one that's about to happen. Which is, I'm sorry. Okay? If you took what I said as a sexist attack, it wasn't. It was generally astonishment that anybody could read Ready Player One as any sort of endorsement of any incel fantasy or anything negative. When in reality, what it is a embracing of geek culture and geek community, and those of us who are geeks, myself included, find it cool that we have something that we can read and geek out about. There's nothing more pernicious than that, I don't think, in control. However, she has made a 33-minute rant, which I will respond to responses to me, and I think that she should be allowed to say her piece, and I should be allowed to respond. It has nothing to do with the fact that the author's male. For that's just in case she decides to skip ahead. It has nothing to do with the fact that she's female. It could be the fact that it's a male, it could be woman, it could be whoever. If I think a take on a media is faulty, I'm going to call it out as, have you actually spared the media? And by the way, it is okay to say, do you know what, I just couldn't get past a certain plot point, or a certain plot point just turned me off so quickly. It is okay to say that. So, with that said, let's watch Rachel's video.
It's time to talk about another book, and I'm gonna rage. I'm named Rachel, and today we're talking about Ready Player One by Ernest Cline, otherwise known as,
About Harris,
in my opinion, Handbook for Incels, or an Incel Manifesto. Incels with
Introducing the new Google Pixel.
Hello everybody, my name's Gary, and we're with you once again. This is Flawed, as I said, and this is going to be a conversation, a conversation starter, I hope, with a lady named Reads with Rachel. She's a booktuber with over 10,000 subscribers. We'll post down her link below. That does not mean harass the lady. Do not harass her. Do not attack her. Do not send her to this video. Do not send her threats. Do not send her anything that is untoward. Fine, front loaded that because I will call you out in the most extreme example. She's entitled to her opinion. I'm entitled to mine. That's the way the human race works. Now, we and this Rachel lady had a bit of a conversation in regards to Ready Player One, the book written by Ernest Cline. Now, as somebody who's a geek, it is very hard for me to have something that portrays Greeks in, shall we say, a more positive light than usually. And Ernest Cline's book, I thought, was a decent thing. Is it perfect? God, no. I mean, I'd probably go to Galaxy Quest or Wreck-It Ralph or any other medium. But again, Ready Player One is a fine book. I embraces nerd culture, which is awesome for me. It's good to see it play out in a book form with a flawed hero. Because again, the guy's not perfect. And again, but she claimed in her book that it was an incel manual. It isn't, but let's have a listen.
In the day. I used to actually have this book on my shelf. I unhauled it. My husband had bought it because he liked the movie. I too have watched the movie. I don't remember anything. I don't remember anything. Me and my oldest kid, we watched it when both of us were very sick. We were very feverish. And I vaguely recall some things. And everything that I recall is different from the book, so I think that they might be different. But you won't catch me watching it again, ever. So I used to have the book. I don't have it anymore. It's off my shelf. It did go in the orange section, which, as you can see, is pretty low. Oh, actually, you know what? Never mind. It's not needed. So God help whoever that book ended up with, because I put it in my little free library. They are surely going to have a terrible time, though not as terrible of a time as I had. So we're gonna rage today and rant about Ready Player One, but first I have to sing thank you for being a friend to my friend. Let me just give you the structure of this video real quick. You know what? Let me give you the structure. Here's how this is gonna go. I am going to tell you what the book is about, and then I'm just gonna complain. And I'm going to give you complaints, but like, I feel like an in-depth analysis of how this book is basically just a incel manifesto has not been done yet. Some people I noticed pointed out the behavior. I don't feel like anybody has talked about how I don't think anybody's approached it from the angle I'm gonna approach it. That's what I'm trying to do, which is what I kind of always try to do. I try to make like content that approaches a book from an angle that has not already been done that way.
And that is to your credit, because again, how many more takes on, for example, Frankenstein being a male birth fantasy do we need? Not that many. And I think it's always good to have a good and fresh take on something, even if I disagree with it very passionately. I think that is to your benefit.
You guys feel like you're watching something new, which is actually really hard to do because there's a lot more creative people on the internet than I. Anyway, here we go. Okay, Ready Player One is about a teenage boy named Wade. He lives in the future, specifically in the year 2044. Everyone is online all the time at this point in a game, in like a virtual reality game called The Oasis. God, I got bit by a fucking...
It's not a game, it's a hub, but we'll forgive it, because it's basically like being in a big theme of, for example, Fortnite. It's kind of like the gateway to games, but you're kind of on the same track. It is kind of a gateway to games, but continue.
Mosquito, and I'm gonna itch this whole fucking video. So it's this virtual reality game that most people spend like the majority of their time in, right? So you could even, and Wade does, attend school within the Oasis. And the guy who created the Oasis was this guy named James Halliday, a mega nerd who is dead. And before he died, he created this hunt for Halliday's Easter egg, which whoever found this in-game in the Oasis Easter egg would inherit his fortune, because this guy had apparently no family members. Quite convenient. Halliday was obsessed with the 1980s, so like all of the info that these egg hunters, which are called gunters, need in order to like figure this game out, figure out the riddle, solve the riddles, get the keys to open the gates. There's 3 keys, 3 gates, and then you open and it goes to you find the Easter egg, right? So all the information that you're gonna need is likely within 80s pop culture. And our main character, Wade, is a gunter, an egg hunter, and he lives with his aunt, whose character is utterly meaningless because
she's not utterly meaningless. She's his main care provider and is a strong female role model that he looks up to. I the one provided him shelter, provided him food, provided him those things, and provided him actually emotional support, which is what he needs while he's there.
why the fuck would Ernest Cline write a relevant woman into the story outside of Wade's gamer girl love interest? Ah, Artemis. Yes, we'll get there. Funny enough, my cat's name is Artemis, but she's named for the badass in Young Justice, not this poor girl who I want to save from this book. We'll get there. So the narration starts out, and it's like presumably an older Wade being like, there's been many versions of this story in books and movies and miniseries. There's been a lot of talk about how it all went down, how I found the keys, and I want to set the record straight. And I'm like, okay. The book was described for some unknown fucking reason as Willy Wonka meets Fantasia, which, it's not. Like, in a way, it's kind of Willy Wonka. It's definitely not Fantasia. It's kind of Willy Wonka, but Willy Wonka is not present for the whole thing, so not Willy Wonka. And another glaringly obvious difference is that Willy Wonka was an original story, and Ernest Cline has trouble with that. Not a smidgen of originality in his body. Actually, that's not true.
Every author takes from things that they know, and will take from things that they understand, because that's the way that you can create a good and in-depth world. Just because somebody creates something that they have taken from, whether it be video games or pop culture, does not make them... Again, you can create something very new for something that you've created. A lot of video games do that. They take a lot of art that was around from other video games and make new art, and actually make fantastic art. A lot of films take things from other films and make fantastic films. Books are the same thing. Just because somebody takes from a book does not make them uncreative. You know, no offense to you, Rachel, but that is not what makes somebody creative or uncreative. People take from other things and make their own art. Being artistic and making it a good piece of a thing that people want to read is what makes it a good piece of art.
True. Because I'm exaggerating. He does create some stuff, right? But then he's like, look, I created a thing. And it's like, what are you going to do with it, Ernest? Nothing. I'm not going to do anything with it. Checks it. Gone. Moving on. Like, what? Why? He does nothing with any of his original ideas, and I want to know why. More on that later. It was also described...
Because a lot of writers are probably their own toughest critics, and we tend to not put out stuff we think is rubbish. I mean, Quentin Tarantino actually did a really good bit that I actually saw today, actually, where he talks about the first movie he ever did, which was, he said, what was it again? That it was a movie that nobody saw that was rubbish, that nobody, but he said that it helped him along make the better work. Again, if you make a movie work, even if you're very satisfied with it and nobody buys it, then you've created something that nobody's going to read. But if you think something's going to read it because they're interested in the same thing to you, hey, you've hit gold.
As the grown-ups Harry Potter, which, no, this has nothing in common with Harry Potter except its main character is a boy who lives with his aunt. That's it. Like, that's literally it. And like, that's a flimsy comparison at best. But if Harry Potter had the titular main character stalking his love interest, and then when rejected buys a online sex doll, I don't know, maybe I missed that scene in Harry Potter. Before I talk about plot and world building, I want to say, listen, I know that this book was published in 2006. Yes, publishing back then put out some things questionable, but what?
Yes, and Plain Royal 1 isn't one of those questionable things.
What the fuck was this? This book had such a wild amount of comments being derogatory to mental illness, fat folks, trans folks. The amount of times that I had to read a sentence making fun of one or both or all of these things was fucking flabbergasted.
You do know that sort of stuff is making fun of those characters who are doing that. Eric Klein has actually said that out loud. This is why you should never combine art with artist. That a person could point out that a character is wildly stupid, and that his perceptions are challenged when he gets out of his own cell bubble, and that is part of character development. You know, Ennis Clan was actually writing a good story arc. By the way, I'm not saying it's a perfect story arc by anybody's means, but we could argue about whether it's a decent story arc.
He says stuff like, Stop hitting yourself like Rain Man. Obsessive compulsive geek. Wonders repeatedly and actually interrogates the love interest, since they haven't met in person, if she's actually a, quote, obese, hairy knuckle guy named Chuck. And then
It's called a joke. He's not being serious. Because again, catfishing is a thing. And by the way, if you are interacting with somebody because you think you're gonna get sex, that's what he's kind of making fun of in that particular scene. That men put themselves in it. He's been parodied it with effects of the typical gamer guy who develops into something different.
just for good.
And by the way, the Rayman comment wasn't ableist. It was showing how ignorant the lead character is.
Measure throws in some classism by saying something smelled like cat piss and abject poverty. I'm begging writers, authors, from now on, when you say something smells like X, say it out loud to yourself. If it doesn't make sense, actually say it out loud to someone else. If it doesn't make sense, or if it sounds kind of dickish, erase it. Take it out of the book.
Yeah, because it's not like his claim was it explicitly describing his own background, which probably did smell like that. Somebody who grew up in the back streets of Manchester, I can tell you that there's a lot of smells that I play with that, but I probably wouldn't use that phrase in a book.
The beginning of this book has, for some unknown fucking reason, Wade giving you a whole speech about how atheist he is. He's like, God's not real and I'm so bitter. Just an angry tirade about how God is bullshit.
He's making fun of angsty teenagers on the internet. He's making fun of angsty teenagers on the internet. That's what he's doing. You know, and his client is making fun of angsty teenagers on the internet and how they come across and how they can be so melodramatic in regards to something, and how everything is a us versus them fight, when if we break everything down, in reality it's not. There's more shades of grey in things that we choose to look at.
And he's made up just like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, and it's like, listen, I'm agnostic, so I get it, Wade, I get it, but I don't need to know this. You, Ernest, are writing a dystopian. Give me a speech from someone living in your world from the perspective of the world that actually matters to the fucking plot, please, for the love of God, or, you know, Santa Claus. Don't give me a tirade from what sounds like an angry 14-year-old who just found his first atheist debate on YouTube and decided he's going to rebel against his Christian family by taking on atheism as his entire personality. It reminds me of like the atheist kid we all knew in high school who was like ready to argue philosophy at the drop of a hat with a teacher who was just like trying to teach Spanish. And while he nailed it, Ernest nailed sounding like a teenage boy, I don't care, because again, it's completely fucking irrelevant to the plot and the story. So why am I being forced to listen to this?
Because it's a teenage boy's book and making fun of teenage boys on the internet. That's the context of the book. If you don't want to read that book, that's fine, don't read it. Nobody's forcing you to read the book you don't want to read. No offense, but like it's the character is a stereotypical nerdy geeky kid who has no frame of reference for the things he's done, and only thinks that the world exists outside of, with his nose face, he's outside the walls. And it's only until he gets outside of his environment that he realises that how wrong he was and how his views change and grow because of that. And he stops being this angry, bitter person and becomes a much more well-developed person as a consequence. You know, he doesn't have interactions with human beings that understands what human relationships are like.
Literally listen. By the way, the audiobook narration is pretty good because Will Wheaton did it. So there you go. Okay. And then after this angry atheist tirade, right, you get the most enormous info dump about the Oasis. Just a huge, like an incredible amount of information dumped in your lap by way of Wade telling you. And I'm like,
yes, and I think that was a poor storytelling. Good, and you're absolutely 100% correct. And I think it overrides the main thing of a book, which is show, don't tell. The way you can do that internally without going, this is what the Oasis says. You're absolutely 100%. I'm with you on this, Rachel.
Like, I just had to sit through you being angry about God. Now I have to sit through this paragraph after paragraph of mansplaining to you nerd culture and how the author...
Oh, right. She used this phrase with me, and I hate it. I hate the word mansplaining, and I'll explain why in a moment. Mansplaining, to me, is sexism. It's that men can't criticise women because women are these soft, delicate creatures who can't stand up for themselves. Yes, you can. You're a strong person with strong values, with strong ideas, with an intellect, with an education. Your opinions are as valid as mine. Me disagree with you is not mansplaining. It is a disagreement. Mansplaining is somebody patronisingly telling you why they disagree with you, which is not what I was doing. And I'm sorry, Rachel, but that is not nor is it what I'm doing in this video. I'm just disagreeing with your take. It's called a conversation where I represent my opinions, you represent yours, and we let people decide which one they agree with.
Used his extensive knowledge to write a book. And at first I was like, okay, this is predictable. It's a bit blah. And I started to make a list of all my favorite 80s shit, like trying to hit bingo, but it got boring because like within 2 seconds of me making this list, I had already hit like 3 different things. In the span of listening to the audiobook, Ferris Bueller's Day Off and War Games are the ones that I remember. And it's like, okay, we both like 80s shit. And Ferris Bueller's Day Off was like my...
And that's the whole point of the book. It's a tribute to nerd culture and 80s stuff.
Entire personality for a season of my high school experience. Cool, I guess. Reciting knowledge about another piece of media from another decade, it does not a good book make.
It does to people who like it. Again, it depends what you want for your book. If you, like me, and like nerd culture, hey, it brings War Games and Ferris Bueller Day Off are decent films. Not perfect films, but decent films. I'm much more of a never-ending story fan of Flight Navigator fan myself, but hey.
Recitation doesn't make you talented at all. Otherwise, we would hire parrots to write books and feed them in birdseed. The thing about this book is that Ernest Cline is going to, and I wish that I had known this from the beginning because I would have had more fun if I could actually have made like a full bingo and tried to hit all of them. Would have like pulled in my brother and my sister in on it, tried to like, you know, see who could get the most squares. Ernest Cline relied on other people's work to make his book fun because he had a hard time with using original concepts that he created on his own to hold up his book. He can...
But that would discount a lot of books, though. That would discount a lot of films. A lot of things take from a lot of things. And take themes and locations and atmosphere from different things. Like, for example, The Dark Knight takes directly from I think it's Heat, and I think like Seven, and there's a load of things like, you know, there's Heat, Seven, there's loads of other influences on it, if we want to take one film. For example, you look at different films being made or different books, they always will pick a film that they kind of want to mimic the tone of or the look of and say, hey, I want to recreate that. And books are no different. People will say, hey, what do I like and what can I pull from to make my book shine that a little bit more? And the fact that he chose the 80s and he chose other people's IP is good for him. If it works for him and it made a good book and people enjoy it, hey, good for him.
Create like a bare bones idea, but then he doesn't know what to do with it beyond just stating that it exists. We're in 2044, there's this future that's dystopian, climate change has wreaked havoc. We could have had this like in-depth discussion about classism and poverty, and he even has this like very brief mention of how Wade ends up in like indentured servitude, and it's so brief, it is wild to me. The amount of time we spent there when we could have had a conversation about that versus the amount of time Wade spends pining over a girl who said, please leave me alone. What the fuck, Ernest? The amount of time that we spent here.
Well, I agree with your politics that, yeah, we could have spent time there. That was not what the story he wanted to tell. He wanted to tell a guy going from rags to riches story, but using their culture and whatever. That's the story he wanted to tell. Now, while you may agree that maybe exploring, like, classism, and he wanted to tell a rags to rich story, and, like, how the rich feed on itself and stuff like that, feed upon the poor and stuff like that. There is a lot of that in the book. It just isn't explicitly said. It is shown. The point the bit you're talking about is a little bit that he talks about it, which again goes into, there are points in the book where he does what you actually should do in the book, which is show don't tell.
Hearing him talk about how he played the goodest of the games of Pac-Man versus he could have actually done something. He relies on other media for everything. It's lazy, it's cheap,
Don't stop.
Relying on this to world build, relying on other people's work.
The way this is his own creation. Yes, he's probably taking inspiration from probably other hubs, but it's his own creation, and he's using other things to populate it in order to make a more true adventure, because that's probably what people would do. They would repopulate things with their own IP that they love.
Instead of creating his own unique stuff. For an example, right, he says, my surroundings made me feel like I was in a low-budget sword and sorcery flick, like Hawkslayer or Beastmaster. So if you don't know what any of those three things are, low-budget, sorcery flick, Hawk the Slayer, Beastmaster, if you don't know what any of those are, you have zero fucking clue what the author is trying to convey there. It's so lazy, it's so cheap, I don't like it. I saw someone on...
It could just be that he was trying to convey that he wanted a B-movie action flick.
Goodreads, no shade to them, describe this book as intellectually genius. This is me searching the book for that. Draw me a map. I'm not seeing it. It's literally entirely reliant on the creativity of others. In every single point where Wade has to get one of the keys to open one of the gates, right? The locations, the levels, the beating everything, all of it is reliant on 80s video games, TV, movies, music, songs. Songs and music are the same thing. Fuck. So much so that much of it is just beat for beat playing out shit that happened in those things. So, for instance, we have like Wade playing out an entire scene from War Games, line by line, hand-feeding us dialogue from War Games. What? Wade playing Pac-Man and playing the most, bestest game of Pac-Man ever again. I get it. I grew up playing Pac-Man too. I like Pac-Man. I know how to play Pac-Man. I enjoyed it as a kid too. But I don't want to read a book where the meat of the story, the real, substance of it, the structure, the original ideas of the story hinge on 30 other pieces of media. Not to mention this book is just Klein, again, describing those things in detail to the audience, which as someone who's already familiar with about 90% of what he's referencing, it feels like fucking slog because it's...
Yeah, that's because you're familiar with it. He's not writing it for you. He's writing for people who aren't familiar with it. So people who are familiar could probably kind of know what he's talking about. People who aren't kind of get a grasp of it and may want to look those things up for themselves. And he gets new players, he gets people interested in those particular pieces of media. That's how you get new readers, that's how you get new things, is that you have old media that introduces new media that are interested in old media. It's happened in places past where old media has referenced new media, from if I was going to go back in books, like for example, there is a huge thing of Flawed's Pirate, where he talks about Flaubert, who was a writer, and gets people interested in Flaubert again. And there's tons of it about where people take from the past and it gets people interested in reading those old stories. Happens in comics books, happens in film, happens in music, happens in everything, where people take from the past and then kind of bring it to a new audience. So the new audience, maybe want to go and explore what that old stuff is about.
It's like the world's most unnecessary history lesson taught to you by a misogynist. Every single clue and piece of the...
And ding, 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 there we are. Ernest Cline is a misogynist. Where is he a misogynist? Where has he ever said anything about maybe that is derogatory? Again, death of the author, people. Death of the author. Postmodernism didn't happen. Ernest Cline doesn't. These may or may not be Ernest Cline's views. Just because somebody writes a book doesn't mean they agree with everything that's in it. I could talk. If you really want to talk about an author and what's in their book, how about? And I'll talk about a book that I love actually. How about this book? Would you say that Margaret Atwood agrees with all the actions of her hero in this book? And as you're a book tuber, you should know what's in this book. And by the way, I'm not saying what's in this book because it'll get flagged, but those of you who actually know what's in that book know what I'm talking about.
The riddle is something from 80s culture. So take like an album, which I forget what band it was. He pretends that since this is the future, nobody knows how an album works. It just takes time to describe what a CD is, like how it opens, like the paper inside, and then the band itself, and then the song itself, and the lyrics, and how it applies. And it's like, oh my god.
In 2007, this sales were at their all-time low. The most popular way people was iTunes or Spotify. I don't even know if Spotify was a thing yet. I don't think it was quite. But iTunes was taking off massively. And he was predicting that people wouldn't be using it, that CDs would be another dead media. He couldn't have foretold that people would be doing day-and-date releases where people would release vinyl, CDs, cassettes, and all at once, and people couldn't enjoy it as much. But nobody could foresee that. So I think Ernest Cline just made a wrong call, which is fair enough. He's entitled to do that. But let's move on.
God. And then we finally get to how it's relevant to him solving these riddles. So it's like only typically one piece out of 4 or 5 that is actually relevant to the story and not just Ernest Cline trying to be a mega nerd. And that, in my opinion, is such lazy writing. We get it. You have a ton of knowledge on 80s stuff. This alone, again, does not a good book make. He's like, I've seen every episode of The Simpsons and Star Trek. I have seen all of the shows in chronological order, he says. Cool, bud, me too. Like, I watched them with my dad. And of course, this doesn't take into account that now there are new Star Trek shows. So, like...
Yeah, but you couldn't foresaw that. You couldn't foresaw that there would be this new burge of Star Trek programming. He was just pointing out that he enjoys the show. Again, Star Trek's fine. I'm more of a Star Wars fan myself. I've been into Star Trek a little bit. I'm not saying I'm a super fan. I kind of lost the interest around Voyager, but that's it really. And The Simpsons, yeah, it was good for a while, but then it tapered off. But again, why is this a problem? Some people are a fan of it, some people aren't. If he's a fan of it and that's what he wants to put up, great. If you don't like it, don't read it.
Like, Halliday wouldn't have watched those? Oh, Halliday himself, the game creator, wouldn't have. See, this is why I think that Ernest Cline should have made up his own nerd lore. Like, that would have been intellectually genius to me. He could have made up his own entire world with all this nerd lore that he created himself from scratch and then solved the riddles with that. Like, created this, these riddles. I would have said that was intellectually genius. I would love to see a book like that. Not only does he feed you line by line scenes from war games, he also does this for Monty Python. And it's like, do I need to be here for this? I could just go watch Monty Python.
Because people who like Monty Python unfortunately quote the lines a lot. And people quote, unfortunately, things they like a lot. Like, even now, I could do, I am the Diego Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. And again, I've not seen that film for 3 or 4 years. But it's in there. We all take things we enjoy and we recite the stuff that we love. Back and just times we probably send it into a mirror to make ourselves feel cool. We want to be that character. And there's a lot of wish fulfillment in the Oasis where you get to see a line from a particular thing because that's what you want to do.
Which I already have, so I don't understand why I am getting the same media, but in like media I've already consumed, but in an unoriginal format that is way less interesting and not adding anything to the original. The whole thing hinges on fans just wanting to be reminded of their favorite shit and like have a dick measuring contest about who knows more trivia, and count me out because I'm not interested in having a dick measuring contest about that. For that reason alone, I would have given the book a low rating, right? But let's talk about the biggest issue I had with it, which is that essentially this book, again, could be called Handbook for Incels. And to make my point, I'm actually going to, a couple times, reference a man. This man's tweets who tried to talk to me about this book on Twitter, wait, did I say talk? Because I meant saw me say that whole Handbook for Incels line and then asked me if I had even read the book. Instead of...
Yeah, because asking people if they've read a book when they've have a really bad reading of it is not a good thing. Again, people have read books, have reviewed books, haven't read them, have stopped book. I've not read all the books all the way through. And by the way, it's okay to do that as long as that you admit that's what you're doing. That's being honest with your audience. And by the way, it's okay to do that. If you want a reason why, I'll give you two men who did it a lot. Siskel and Ebert, probably like two of the most famous film reviewers of all time, would walk out of movies, but they would say, "Hey, what sort of movies? Do you want sort of Maniac? I can't think of the movies they brought up. I mean, so some people less down below other movies that they do what so. It is okay to not walk out of movies. But anyway, let's go.
Asking me to elaborate, insinuated that I, being a mere woman, simply had not read.
It has nothing. It's nothing to do with you being a woman. It has everything to do with the fact that your take saying it was in itself handbook seemed a bit unusual to me. That has nothing to do, zero to do with you being a woman. And to make my case, let me introduce you to the film Room 237. For those who don't know, it's about The Shining. And Room 237 has a bit where a guy says it is Stanley Kubrick admitting that he faked the Apollo moon landing. That is a wacky take, and I've got a question whether the guy's even seen the bloody Shining, because the Shining, the film that I've seen, that I've enjoyed multiple times, has zero to do with the moon landing. Does he deviate from the book? Yeah, but in those deviations, he's trying to tell a scarier story. He's not trying to say, I faked the Apollo moon landing. Anyway, continue.
The book that I was talking shit about. Did you even read it? This man asks me. No, Greg, you're right. I did
My name's Gary, mate. My name's Gary.
not read it. I am a woman. We do not read.
Right. Yeah, because women can't read books, can they? It's not like half my class were women, or that some of my favourite authors are women, like Margaret Atwood. It's not like some of my favourite people who write books currently are women, like, for example, Elizabeth and Eva, who are both female authors, who are both women, and have read books and do not just dodge into stupid things like a book is an incel book on their particular things. Because, you know, I don't judge somebody based upon their gender or their sex. Unless they are being presented misogynist or misogynist. Continue.
Read biologically, we are incapable. We simply do not have the capacity for such things. We simply regurgitate opinions we hear on the...
No. There's no regurgitating. You could just have read a summary of it. A bad summary read to you by somebody that you trust. Boom. You could have formed an opinion through that. You could have read an excerpt of it and you decided it wasn't for you. Fine. If you did that, that's super. There's nothing wrong with asking if I think it's wrong for you to explain, have you read it? It was a question. It wasn't a statement. I was asking if you read it, not because you're a woman, but because your take was wacky to me. I'm sorry. Saying Ready Player One, which I have actually read, is a incel training manual, which again, you're taking this part of it and saying this is the type of the book. Again, you're not explaining the context of why you think that. You're not going into, here is why I think that. And by the way, being questioned about a criticism you have is part of literary criticism. You are going to be questions on your opinion, good, bad, or indifferent. It has nothing to do with you being a woman, but it has anything to do with if you have an opinion, people are going to challenge you on them. It's part of being constructive criticism. People are going to challenge you intellectually on your opinions. It has nothing to do with your gender, your sexuality, your religious beliefs, your race, your identity, any of that. It has to do with the things you say, and that's what I was challenging. It has nothing to do with the fact you're a woman. But the fact that you seem to think that, I think, points to the way that you see men, not the way I speak women.
The internet without comprehending what words mean. I need a man to explain Ready Player One to me. Please educate me, Gregory. I don't remember his
My name's Gary, but come on.
name, so we're just gonna call him Gregory. So let me tell you what transpired to make me label this book Handbook for Incels, okay? Wade meets the love interest Artemis, who is like this super nerdy girl, fellow egg hunter, and he meets her right as he has found and won the first key. Okay? Turns out she's been trying to beat the thing that you have to beat in order to get the key for weeks now. And she's like, oh, you're here, we could talk about it, and she's like trying to be nice, and he's like, I actually have to go. And I don't know why he isn't just honest with her about finding the fucking key. What's she gonna do? Stab him in a video game?
It's not like he just found something that people have been searching for years and he doesn't know who can trust yet. It's a stranger on basically the internet. We all should be wary of strangers on the internet. Oh, but it's okay for her to question him.
Okay, so fucking weird and stupid. And he already has a minor crush on her, right? And within 2 seconds of meeting her, he's already like, I had the sudden urge to kiss her. Direct quote. Stop. No.
He's a teenage kid. They don't understand boundaries. That's the whole point. He doesn't understand boundaries because he's been living on the internet. The whole critique is about not living on the internet and enjoying real life and getting to have real emotions with real people and getting to know the real people that you interact with. That's the whole point of the book. By the way, continue.
She's in the middle of speaking, you fucking weirdo. And instead, again, of being upfront with her, he doesn't tell her he has the key, and she's like, okay, dick. I don't know why you didn't just say that in the fucking first place. Anyway, they strike up a friendship, they start hanging out more and more. He tells her, hey, I have a crush on you. She kind of reciprocates, but then he goes on this fucking line of interrogation, right? It can only be described as that. In their messages where he's like demanding to know, are you a biological woman? And have you always been a biological woman? We get it, man. You're a transphobe. Chill.
He's a teenage kid who doesn't understand how boundaries work. The whole point of that particular is that he doesn't understand how actual relationships work, how identity works, how personal autonomy works, any of that things works, because he's this isolated little kid who's been spending his life on the internet. Who doesn't understand these things because, again, the things that we learn in real life that inform those things, he hasn't learned. And that's the point that Ernest Klein was trying to make in the book, and that's what he's trying to critique.
The fuck out. Her vagina is super important to you. So fucking weird and gross. Just stop. This is so inappropriate. And then it all goes downhill because Wade decides to tell Artemis that he is in love with her. And she's like, yeah, bro, no. I'm just trying to egg hunt. I've got priorities. You wouldn't like me if you saw me in person. Oh, by the way, it's because she has a port wine stain, which is a birthmark. Oh, Ernest. And he's like,
Right. You don't get that whole point was about how people think that they're going to think negatively if we have any sort of imperfection on our face. I wear glasses. It's an imperfection on my face. I have a beard. That's an imperfection on my face. I'm getting older, so I've got wrinkles on my head. That's an imperfection. We live in a society, and again, that's a society is critiquing that provides that everyone must be perfect and look like a stick figure to be for this. It has how it feeds into that insecurity. Now, instead of that being saying that he was actually doing a whole, pro people with disabilities think that, you know, it doesn't matter what you like, it doesn't matter what you are, as in a person, and that we shouldn't put expectations on people because of the way they speak, that, you know, is not always going to match reality. And that the hero learns that throughout and goes through a journey, because he doesn't always go through a journey in a waste, he actually goes through a personal building journey throughout the book.
She's like, I don't think we should hang out anymore. And he's like, wait, you're breaking up with me? And she says, that would be impossible because we're not together, right? Instead of at any point reflecting on that line that she said, Ernest has Wade keep saying, she dumped me, she dumped me, she dumped me.
All right. Ernest is just reflecting how teenage kids deal with rejection. This is not Ernest Cline's actual position. You know, just because somebody writes something in the book does not say that they endorse said view. As I said, if you do, you'd have to explain, does Margaret Atwood apologise for the stuff that's in this book? And by the way, this was written by a woman. And Rachel, if you just said that people... So if Ernest wrote that, and that's what he's doing, how come Margaret Atwood isn't apologising for this book? And do you know why she's not? Because those aren't her views, and those aren't Ernest Cline's views. It's more likely that he thinks that he's making fun of the fact that teenage boys think like that. That they think that, oh, if a woman's talked to them for more than 5 minutes, they're going out. He's making fun of that kind of guy. And that the fact that he lives on the internet and doesn't have any perception of how real life relationships work.
Which tells me that this is probably Ernest writing from personal experience and not...
No. He's making fun of that kind of relationship. He's probably seen it because he was on gaming boards. You know, somebody could observe something and think, that's messed up. I'm going to show that in a book. To show how being offline is as important as being online.
Accepting that they were not together, and therefore it is gross to say she dumped me. Anyway, she leaves. She tells him not to contact her again, but guess what? He does incessantly, not just once. He contacts her over and over and over, non-stop. He emails, he calls, he even though the Oasis is virtual, shows up outside of where he knows she will be with a boombox a la John Cusack. He complains repeatedly, non-stop, that he was dumped despite having been told that they were not together. He then buys a sex doll, which let me just before I even continue explaining the misogyny, let me focus in here for a second. This is worse than the atheism tirade, okay? There's no reason for this to have been in the book. I would have taken 2 atheism tirades instead of this. I did not need to know that this teenage boy was so distraught over a girl rejecting him that he bought a glorified online sex doll. Why do I need to know that? Why, Ernest?
Because he's a teenage boy, and that's what teenage boys do. They don't know how to process things like in an adult or mature manner. I know it is, as I said, Ernest Cline is not representing his own views. Criminy Christmas. He is not representing his own views.
You owe me for therapy. I'm horrified. He's like, oh, it's not the same because it's not a real, even though it feels like a real person.
And by the way, she'll say, I've said this because I'm a bad. No, I'm saying it because people write things in books doesn't mean they support their views. Because if you did that, we're gonna go through a very rocky road. If I start going through things that people have written, that again, they probably hold they're either parodying, they're just writing a book to write a book, or they're just writing a book, you know, for fluff. Doesn't mean they support those views.
It's not the same because it's not, it's just not real. I'm not really losing my virginity is what he actually says. And I'm like, virginity is a social construct. And also, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Virginity is something that people put on to people who haven't had sex because they want to pressure people into sex, because they think that sex is something that people should be having. I agree with you, and that's the whole point that he's making, that people put too much onus onto sex and not onto actually building meaningful relationships that sometimes may or may not have sex in it.
So sorry that it's not a real person you're online boning. Anyway, he continues to go on to cyber stalk Artemis, even though she made her boundaries explicitly clear, but they were violated on purpose by Ernest, who was doing a very specific thing. That is...
Wade, not Ernest, Wade. See, she keeps on doing it, and I'm gonna keep on pointing it out. You need to differentiate character from author. The character is a teenage boy who does not understand things like, for example, boundaries and things like for example, when a girl says no, she means no, because he's making fun of that. Unless you can find me specific proof that Ernest Cline says he endorses these views, you won't find him doing so, because he doesn't. He was a married man before when he wrote this. He's a married man now. He knows what isn't acceptable in consensual relationships.
That is why I think this is called Handbook for Incels. Let me dig in there for a second, okay? Let me describe what an incel is and explain how Ernest fits into this category, okay?
Wait.
An incel refers to a subculture of men who form their entire identity around a perceived inability to form relationships, both romantic and sexual, with women. A significant...
Okay, that is what it means. It means involuntary celibate, and celibacy has to do with sex. It is, and again, I've looked this up. I looked up your people and yourself sent me. I could not find any. Now, it doesn't mean that they don't exist, but I couldn't find any. Now, incel, it means involuntary celibate. Celibacy has to do with sex. They be entitled to or having sex. By the way, there's nothing wrong with wanting to have sex with somebody if you formed a relationship with them, but this goes beyond that. You're jealous of people actually having sex, and you think you're entitled to somebody's body. It's a totally inappropriate and very misogynistic way of looking at a woman. Ernest Cline is not an incel, nor does he endorse incel culture. Okay? Nowhere has he said that women should be subordinate to men or all men's sex. Nowhere has he said that. Nor does he think that, nor does his Cline have problem forming relationships with women. He's a married man. And this is what happens when you conflate author with character. Anyway, continue.
An amount of incels engage in online misogynist behavior, aggressive behavior.
Agreed. But if you want to talk about real incels, I'm with you, Rachel. I hate them as well. Because they make us men look bad. Well, they make themselves look bad, but they make us men look bad. Because they seem to think that anything that they want has to do with sex. You can have a relationship without wanting sex. You can have sex without wanting a relationship. You can have neither, you can have both. And all are fine. And all are fine as part of being a man, being a woman, being non-binary. Okay? End. Alright, continue.
In rare individual cases, incels will lash out in real life in violent rages, like Elliot Rodger, who killed a bunch of people and now is seen as a hero in some parts of incel culture. However, online misogyny can also be used to predict domestic violence. Internet trolls who are hostile online are similarly hostile offline. According to recent research, incels have a tendency for interpersonal victimhood, and that describes an ongoing feeling that the self is a victim. They have this victimhood mindset where there is an external factor that controls them being a victim, right?
Okay, we agree. And no, it's themselves. Again, most adults don't do this. They self-reflect and they make efforts to correct their own behaviour. Because you can only correct your own behaviour, you can't correct what other people do. There was for a while there in my younger years where I thought that anybody was against me. But it wasn't until I grew up and went to uni basically that I realised that I was in charge of my own destiny. And that nobody else could define me and that I have to define myself. It's not an incel mindset, it's unfortunately anxiety and a lot of other things that bring into it that go into being fun. I don't continue.
They subscribe to a black pill worldview, and they believe that nothing could improve their situation with not being able to get women to be romantically or sexually interested in them. Interpersonal victimhood is comprised of 4 things: need for recognition, moral elitism, lack of empathy, and rumination. And incels typically score high in those 4 dimensions. What do they get out of being an incel? Community, specifically fraternity. They get a common enemy. They think that women are the problem, but also alpha men are the problem.
No, that isn't the problem. That's what they actually get out of it is some sort of justification in their mind that they're entitled to women's bodies when they're not. Women are able to be attracted to and not attracted to whoever they wish, and they do not get, and nobody gets to control that unless the women themselves. If they get some community, well, that's more shamed at, in my opinion. But continue.
They get a excuse not to participate in what they feel like is a dating scene that causes them to feel inadequate. They engage in these online forums where they talk to each other. They say that it helps them feel less lonely and feel understood, helps them feel like they have a sense of belonging somewhere. But half of them report that the forums still make them feel hopeless. They are a hard to reach group, and they are at risk for bad behavior, negative behavior. Mira Lindner, who is a postdoctorate fellow at Harvard, who studies violent cognition, terrorism, and misogynistic extremism informed by evolutionary theory, wrote a article or paper report entitled Alone Together in Angry Misogynistic Extremism and Coalitional Bargaining for Sexual Access, which the title really explains the incel movement. I'll link about down below if you're interested. She states the current article proposes that misogynistic extremism emerges from the emergence wary, you could say, of mental health interventions that could possibly help them. Incels have high...
Right, and that's the reason why I initially supported what John Peterson was doing, which was, I thought initially was going to reach out to help these people, not be incels. I actually thought, the good part of my heart thought he was actually going to do that. That is what he did. He seems to be more endorsing their behaviour, which kind of made me quite ashamed for actually thinking that he would actually do something positive to help these people in the obvious help they obviously need. But
high levels of depression, loneliness, anxiety, sociosexual desire, low levels of satisfaction in life, and they are more likely to be not in education, employment, or training. And yes, socioeconomic conditions do need to be addressed and improved, and that would likely lead to less incels. However, recognizing this could also, recognizing that this is a problem within themselves that they need to seek help for, could also help. And I just find it fucking annoying that they expect their conditions to be improved by women, because that's not women's responsibility, and incels already expect more from women than they are due because of misogyny. Dr. David Lay, who I've referenced in my other video about porn at large, is that these and what they want goes beyond sex. They don't. Sex work is work, by the way, and I have a video on
agree with that.
That link down below. What they want is the attention, time, and is boosted, and it is this system of beliefs and ideology about women, even though he claims he's not the misogynist, other men are the misogynists. Let me prove it to you by showing you this poem that Ernest wrote about porn. I've noticed there don't seem to be any porno movies that are made for guys like me. Nope, no, porn is for the majority made for the male gaze, and we need to work on that.
Yeah, but not every man wants stuff made for the male gaze. You know, I mean, thing is, like you know, just because you're male doesn't mean you want things made, even if it's porn made for the male gaze. Again, I actually want more female adult movies because then it doesn't have, you know, things that are, shall we say, making women feel inadequate. You know, real women are a whole point. And by the way, she actually read this. Yes, she's reading it, but she actually read this and understood it, because the whole point of this is that he's talking about a fantasy that doesn't exist in real life, and how he actually wants real women, you know, women who have, You know, so some of us want something made for the female gaze and actually would probably appreciate it more than porn is the moment, which is you're a man, you just want a typical woman who looks like this. It's like, no, not necessarily. I like women of all shapes and sizes, and because it makes me appreciate all of them. And by the way, you just said it yourself, and that's what a disclaimer is saying. No, continue.
Porn I've come across was targeted at, and here's where he denounces a particular group of men who he sees as the, problem. Beer-swilling, sports bar-dwelling alpha males, men who like their women stupid and submissive, men who can only get it up for a monosyllabic, cock-hungry nymphos with gargantuan breasts and a three-word vocabulary. Adult films are populated with these collagen-injected liposuction women, many of whom have resorted to surgery and self-mutilation in an attempt to look the way they have been told to look. These aren't real women, they're objects, Ernest. And these movies aren't erotic, they're pathetic. These vacuum-headed fuck bunnies don't turn me on, they disgust me. And it's not that I'm against pornography, I mean, I'm a guy, and guys need porn. Fact. Like a preacher needs pain, like a needle needs a vein, guys need porn. But I don't want to watch this misogynistic he-man woman hater porn.z. I want porno movies that are made with guys like me in mind. Guys who know that the sexiest thing in the world is a woman who is smarter than you are. You just said you don't want misogynistic porn, but then said you want porn made with you in mind.
With the new Google Pixel 7 Pro,
Because
zoom gets you closer to the action than ever.
I hate to
While
say this,
macro
Rachel,
focus
because
captures
not all
even the
men
tiniest
are
detail.
misogynists.
All thanks to Google's
Some of us,
triple
and I know
camera
this is going to come
system
as a
on Google
shock,
Pixel 7
want
Pro.
women to make really, really good content. And by the way, there are women who are actually going out there.
The official The Lord of the Rings of Power podcast.
And by the way, also, you do not need porn. Well, porn is actually a good, healthy thing if it's done within couples, and it is it's something that both a couple shares, and there's nothing wrong with a person enjoying porn in their own personal life if they want to. Continue.
I don't need Monster Energy to drink to live. I need water to live. I like to drink Monster Energy. My God, people, please sponsor me by now.
Actually, masturbation increases mental health outcomes, so it can actually help people in a lot of good ways.
Jesus Christ, I'm practically holding up your entire business. If you're an intelligent woman who is interested in breaking into the adult film industry, and if you can tell me the name of Luke Skywalker's home planet, then you are hired. Pass. It doesn't matter if you think you're overweight or unattractive. It doesn't matter if you don't think you're beautiful. You are beautiful, and I will make you a star. Love that little covert fat phobia right there. That's great. Oh my...
No, he pointed out that he doesn't care. That isn't what it makes somebody attracted to him. That is intelligence. And actually, I'm the same thing. There's actually a term for it. I think is it sapiosexual, that you're attracted to somebody's intelligence. Yeah, and I would say that I'm along the same lines. I'm not attracted to somebody's looks. I've been out with women of all shapes and sizes. If the woman's intelligent and we got good chemistry, that's what I look for.
God, so many fucking
by the way, YouTube, sort this out.
red flags. Where do I start? Maybe I should just start by calling Ernest Klein's mother and asking her to cut off the internet in her house, so Ernest can take a break and go touch
He's married.
some grass. He hits so many incel talking points in that poem. I should have...
No, he didn't. How many incels do you know would even that intelligent women who want to have a female gaze even exist? That porn, as it is very misogynistic and very male driven. That it is written for guys of a certain type. Guys who just go around just going, "Who's got big tits?" When no, some of us want more intellectual stuff like that. Like, for example, I don't know, Emmanuel, for example, or something like that. Something where it's a bit high class and it has a plot and it has a woman with intelligence behind it and she's not afraid of her sexuality. That's all he's asking for. That does not make him an incel. He does not have problem forming relationships. He's a married man.
made a goddamn bingo board. Thinks the world caters to alpha men and that they are getting something that he's deserving of. He thinks there's an entire group of women who are literally objects and less
He's criticising that. He was criticising the way that porn is, that it's only dedicated to one type of man. Not that it's into to man who wants to see things from the female gaze. That's what he's talking about. And that's what I want. I want an incel either. Because it's called representation. I want more females to be directing. Female stars tend to make the most money. Why aren't they directing more? And by the way, I disagree with his assessment of most female stars. Most female stars are intelligent, really successful businesswomen. And I think that's a very misogynistic worldview that he has. But it's got a disagreement. We can have that disagreement as people. Continue.
valuable and sees them as, you know, worthless because to him they are stupid and look a certain way. Thinks that he is entitled or owed pornography, entitled to rather, and that it is a need instead of a want. And I find
because he's asking for something done for the female gaze and for something representative. Sure that would be a good thing for something to be representative of, like, you know, intelligent women who aren't vapid. Again, by the way, I don't agree with his view on porn actresses or adult actresses or whatever you want to say it. You know, most of them are intelligent, very successful business women. And probably make more money than this client does, and more money than I do. Anyway, continue.
Find it so ironic that he calls his porn good and that he thinks he's not being a raging misogynist by writing this shit. Like, you think that you don't hate women, Ernest? You literally just called an entire group of them objects simply because they don't give you as hard of a raging boner as chicks and horn.
Yeah, and that's the problem. And that is a problem. I agree with you. But that doesn't make him misogynist. That just makes him wrong in that particular sense. And by the way, I disagree with him as well. Okay.
And glasses. So that brings me back to Wade. Wade never apologizes for literally stalking Artemis for months. He never thinks, hey, I violated her explicitly stated boundaries, and maybe I don't deserve her attention that I am demanding from her. Instead of apologizing for this misogyny, he actually says, I'm really a nice guy once you get to know me.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that's the point that Eddie Slade was trying to make in the book. That unfortunately, that some of us men in our teenage years have uttered the terms, I'm a nice guy when you get to know me. And again, I used to do it a lot. Until until I learned from, you know, my female friends, that's kind of not okay. But because I was open for them telling me why that's kind of not okay and what it was actually an underground level for, you know, now I don't think it's okay. And I think I actually try and tell men, don't say that. You know, there's a way that you can communicate that, you know, you're an actual nice person. You can just be a nice person. Period. If people like you, that's when they like you. If they don't, they don't. And just deal with that. Just need to go on with it.
She answers with, you know, we just met, and he says, I'm in love with you. And then they kiss. And the book ends. What? What Ernest did here to me is so insidious because he literally made a book where the guy, the main character, the hero, does all of the behaviors that women ask men not to do, are scared by, and then he gets away with it, doesn't say sorry, and gets the girl in the end because he knew what was best for her. He knew he was a nice guy and a high value male, if you will, who deserved her time and attention and physical affection. And he just needed to make her see it instead of, you know, valuing her human dignity enough to listen and comply with her explicitly stated boundaries. And in the end, of course, she comes around because this is Ernest's fantasy. In reality, us women who this has
Not Ernest Claire's fantasy.
happened to, and I would wager to say that this has happened to most women watching this.
Right, you keep on doing this. It's not Ernest Klein, it's Wade, the character. They're two different people. You know, the author doesn't mean they condone the actions of their character. As I showed you before, Lawrence Craig, you would have had job proving that that Margaret Atwood has the same sort of behaviours as the characters in that book. We continue.
Women and femmes, we have had to deal with men thinking that they are entitled to our time and attention. We have had
agreed, and that's misogynist and wrong.
Men somehow get our phone numbers and message us nonstop. We have had them.
Yes, I agree, and that's why us men, if we're respectful, will stop after you make it clear I might not respond back. Then we would again. I have stopped texting the woman recently because she made it clear to me that she no longer wanted to communicate by the fact that she's not texting me back. I've let the ball in her court. If she gets back to me, cool. If she doesn't, go. I'll move on with my life. She can move on with her life. Go.
Message us from unknown phone numbers once we block them, email us constantly, show up at our work. We don't want you to keep calling after we've made our boundaries so explicitly clear. We will not see the light and realize, oh gosh, he's a nice guy. He deserves my attention even though he has violated my clear boundaries that I set. We who this has happened to, we don't know what kind of guy you're going to be in the end. Are you going to be the guy who's finally going to give it up in 5 weeks? You think you're entitled to our attention, you show up outside our house with a boombox, and then that'll be the end of it. You know, you'll eventually get over it and move on to another girl? Or is this going to end in you engaging in online incel groups and then coming and murdering us because we're the problem? So fuck you, Ernest Cline. Free Artemis from Wade the Incel. A way better book about video games is Slay by Brittany Morris. This features women in STEM. The main character creates an online video game that you do like virtual reality. You step into the game, and it's a celebration of like Black culture across the diaspora. And Brittany Morris actually works in the gaming industry, and I just highly recommend this book, both in the physical copy version.
Right, everybody go buy the book. By the way, go buy both books and compare them to yourself and make up your own minds. Don't agree with everything I said. Don't agree with everything she said. Read it for yourself and come to your own conclusions. Best advice I can.
But also, the audiobook is great. It's also just really pretty. Like, she's gorgeous. Anyway, highly recommend you read this instead of woo. Anyway, it's something you can commission me if you would like to. Okay, that's the channel you're on. Questions down below, and I will see you next time. Bye.
Okay, that's the end of that. Okay, so what was the problem overall? Well, she combined Arthur and by not understanding that what Ernest Cline was talking about was the fact that he was making fun of teenage boys and the way that they see character. He's a married man. He's still a married man. And the thing is, the point he's trying to get across is that not all men want the same sort of porn. We want something made for the female gaze. That we want something with women with intelligence. That we actually want a story. That we want something told. And we don't want it just to be simple wank material. And also, Ready Player One isn't a incel book. The whole point is that the character is a teenage boy who has all the frame of reference of somebody who lives on the internet. And this isn't me mansplaining to you, Rachel. This is me disagreeing with you and providing you with a point of view. Now, can you agree with it? Sure. Can you disagree with it? Sure. But it's one that, again, I should be allowed to question your reading of it. I not see it as attacking you personally. But I look for, by the way, people who are attacking Rachel, do not do that. I think I've thrown out about that. You're ruining the conversation and you're ruining the dialogue. That must happen. Because again, men like me must listen to women like Rachel, and Rachel must listen to men like me, because it's called a conversation. Okay? Enough men have apologised for shitty behaviour, and I certainly don't want to be the next one. Okay? End of story. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that.